All units, Irene. I say again, Irene.
EP Magazine's annual healthcare issue offers a range of articles that explain how to expand access for patients with special needs and their families, which can improve health outcomes as well as quality of life. Sign up and read it for free at www.epmagazine.com.
Monotony. It comes in all shapes and sizes. Dull, tedious, just plain boring. But what is this? A contender, perhaps? Something unboring by the looks of it. Jabs right at dull, an uppercut to tedium, something that keeps you on your toes, keeps your head on a swivel, a knockout punch to your old, boring workouts. Welcome to Fight Camp.
Am I under arrest?
You've assaulted an innocent man in front of his wife and baby girl. Do you remember any of that?
Does the defendant have any priors?
Resisting arrest, DUI, assault.
My client has been awarded a Purple Heart and a Bronze Star Medal for his combat service.
I'm ordering you to undergo a 60-day outpatient rehabilitation program. Good luck.
Nah, I'm not doing that. Do you know what the VA's put me through?
If you have a brain in your head, you're going to listen to me right now. Because the next time you try to provoke a lethal response from law enforcement, you might not have an angel sitting on your shoulder.
The courts think that you're gonna fix me.
I hate to disappoint you, but I can't fix you. That's your job, not mine.
Did you know that your father got out?
He's a dangerous man, Calvin. Be careful.
We came back and they spat on us at the airport. No homecoming parade, no celebrations.
You can't pretend like you have any idea what it's like to be in combat.
No, but what I do know is this field of work that I've dedicated my life to has helped a lot of people.
When you got back, something was different. It wasn't that you'd changed. You'd been replaced.
You lose your morality when you go to war. And the hard part is coming back to a civilian society that doesn't have any idea what's going on in your head.
It's hard to believe my enemy is the man I used to be.
I bet you wonder, where's my tribe? And I ain't talking about no friendship neither. I'm talking about brotherhood.
What is it that you truly want, Calvin?
I just want to wake up in the morning and feel something.
My pain is relative, son. Sometimes we gotta fall apart to find ourselves all over again.
You were willing to give your life for your country. Now maybe you can try living for it.
What are you feeding this guy? Look at this.
What do you want? I did 4 tours.
Of the Cheesecake Factory.
Oh! Okay. Little spicy, little spicy.
The movie, music, news, television promos, trailers, and videos used by Oscar Mike Radio are protected by the Fair Use Act. Section 107 of the Copyright Act. 1. The purpose and character of the use, including whether such use is of commercial nature or is for non-profit educational purposes. 2. The nature of the copyrighted work. 3. The amount and substantiality of the portion used in relation to the copyrighted work as a whole. 4. The effect of the use upon the potential market for or value of the copyrighted work.
I joined the military to be a part of something bigger, and solving complex problems was part of the job. But when it came to my mental health, I had no clue where to start.
Thankfully, you didn't need to figure it out alone.
If the veteran in your life is having a hard time, you can be the one to offer help.
VA has resources like family education about mental health challenges, couples therapy, and parenting courses, so you can help your veteran build a brighter future.
Learn more about resources available at mentalhealth.va.gov/families.
Hello and welcome again to Oscar Mike Radio as we count down to number 500. Oscar Mike Radio is co-produced with Sinister One Productions. What's your podcast doing? I want to thank my sponsors, Joyce Asek of Asek Real Estate, Echo 6 Creations, Danielle Rocco, thank you very much, and my supporters, Cason Shaving Company, Exceptional Parent Magazine, and Fight Camp. Be your strongest combination. Yeah, we are counting down to 500, and yes, this year, 2026, is off to a fast start. Everything just seems to be getting faster the more I do this. But one thing that I am seeing more and more are other veterans in the creative space, the storytelling space, telling their stories, getting together. I think all of us realize that, there's stories that we have lost from past service members, and we're trying to come together in a way, and my next guest embodies all that. I met my next guest through the tip of the spear, and thank you, David Willis, fellow Marine, for putting that together. Marie Henriksen served in the Army, has an interesting story and creative space that I wanted to share with you all. Marie, welcome to Oscar Mike Radio.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I'm really glad to be here. As Travis said, my pen name, if you're looking for me, is Marie Slider Henriksen. Slider is my maiden name, and that is the tag of all of my social media, which is SliderBabe, SliderBabe. But I'm super glad to be here, Travis.
Absolutely. Well, in the interest of full disclosure and confession, I thought like Slider was like some kind of like Army name holdover, something that you got. Maybe you slid into a 5-ton or something. I don't know. But, okay, got it.
They picked on me a lot for that. We'll say that. I got all sorts of nicknames. Everyone loved it. So it was fun. My favorite nickname for it was Curveball. That one was fun. Or the Slider, you stink, from Top Gun.
It's funny how the military guys and gals just find certain things to append to you, and it just sticks. It doesn't go away.
Yes.
You served in the Army. You're in the Army now. What did you do in the Army, Marie?
I was a medic. I was, they originally, it was 91 whiskey, and they switched it to 68 whiskey while I was in training, but I was a combat medic, and I did all versions of being a medic. From, working at the aid station or the health clinic. I was in a civilian job in a military uniform when I was in Germany. And then in stateside, I was a combat medic and in Washington. And then I deployed to Iraq, and I was the combat field medic, actually going out on missions and stuff, ambulance driver, all sorts of stuff over there. And then when I came stateside, I did brigade surgeon cell. So I did the desk job as a medic. So I had 6 years or almost 6 years, 5.5 years of experiences of different ways you can be a medic.
I've had more than a couple of Navy corpsmen on my show. And I'm going to ask you the same question I've asked them. And I was in Camp Pendleton, Marine combat training just after boot camp, and we're sitting there, we just got done with the day's training, and a corpsman comes up to us and says, "I want you to drink a canteen of water right now, Marines." And, of course, he outranked us. We're all privates and PFCs, so we drank the water. And he's like, "Hey, it literally is as simple as clean socks, 1,000 milligrams of Motrin when needed, and a gallon of water minimum a day." Now, I don't know how the Army does it, but that's the Navy and Marine Corps experience. Did you aspire to any of that for your soldiers? Did you tell them that? Is there something to that where it's clean socks, Motrin, and water?
I mean, yeah, we called it vitamin M, the Motrin. It was vitamin M. Everyone was using it and whatnot. That was one of the things. It's sad because, the military breaks you, and then they just throw candy at you, the meds, we call it candy. But that is definitely something. The drink water, drive on. That's a huge
Drink
one.
water,
You know,
drive
we
on.
say that all the time. Drink water, drive on, but always hydration. Always hydration. When we were deployed, we had Camelbacks, but we also had I don't know if you've been deployed, but we had these giant water bottles that were clear. They had no wrapper. We have no idea where the water came from, but we had to drink like multiple of those a day. They were like this big. And then in training, of course, you've got your canteens. And so water always. And then the changing your socks, that's a motivation thing. It really is. Like when you're trudging through cold or heat and your socks get wet, it's like change your socks and that'll help you feel better. And like if your feet are healthy, that's your foundation and it's super important. And it just helps with that motivation.
It's not different flavor of the way it's saying it, but it's the same message. It's the same message. Um, did you ever have to give shots, Marie?
Did I have to give shots? Yes. Yeah. Yeah. We did shots in the arm, in the butt, whatever. Yep.
You're smiling like you enjoyed that way too much, Marie.
Oh,
Way
it's fun.
Really?
It's fun when you get people who are uncomfortable and it's like, dude, you got to do it. You got to do it. And I know
Yeah.
it's sad. I hated getting them myself, but that's definitely a big thing. My favorite thing was actually giving IVs. I loved giving IVs, finding veins on people, like, like when I see people with a pretty vein, I like focus on their arm and they look at me like what are you doing? I was like, can I give you an IV?
Is that why some of my nursing medical friends look at my arms like, oh yeah, I see that vein. I just want to poke it.
Yes.
And I'm like, man, I don't know what they did to you in medical school with Florence Nightingale. I don't know. So, all right,
Oh
all right,
yeah.
all right. Whew. So you do that for what, 6 years? And you must have had some doozy stories of people messing themselves up and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, I had the fun stories, but I also had the hard
Yeah.
stories, the difficult stuff. Yeah.
Because sometimes, like you said, we do get broken doing training or in combat, right?
Yeah.
It does happen. Um, you do that for what, 6 years?
So I actually ended up getting medically discharged. So I was in
Okay.
for about 5.5 years. But yeah, so you do your training. So training South Carolina was a couple months for basic training, and then I did my EMT combat training for 6 months because I was a double tap actually, and double tap means that you failed twice on one of the tests, and so I had to go backwards and restart a section, and it was the sad thing was it was the gynecology and stuff. I don't know what it means to be a woman for myself or for other people apparently.
I don't know what to
So
say. Okay,
yeah,
right. Oh,
yeah,
okay. All right. I mean, you would certainly know more about that than I would, but okay.
yeah. But I did that. So that was my first like what 8 months, something like that for all the training, and then I ended up in Germany for 2 years, and then Washington State for a few months before I deployed. Was in Iraq for a year from '09 to 10. When I was in Iraq, I ended up my hips gave out. I had hip problems when I was in basic training, but drink water, drive on, take the vitamin M, keep going, change your socks, all that stuff. You keep going, push through. I dislocated one of my hips in a snowboarding accident up in Germany. And then when I was in Iraq, I was 8 months, 4 months straight going out on missions every day. I was with the field artillery guys at that point, and bouncing around in the trucks and all of the weight of the gear bouncing on top. So I'm being smashed between my plates and the vehicle. And then, running on all the rocks and dragging all the gear and dealing with all of that stuff. And when I went home on leave after 8 months, my hips just gave out and ended up getting hospitalized. When I got back to the FOB, my last 4 months, I was grounded. Um, and then my last year and a half when we got out was stuck at a desk job. But I did the medical readiness for everybody when they were getting ready to deploy to Afghanistan in 2011. And so, yeah.
everybody, I mean, I medically transitioned out too, and it was a hard adjustment at the time, and then I had to start my civilian life. What was that transition period like for you, Marie?
So, just to give a quick background for
Sure.
you, I came from a pretty rough childhood. I was born to addict alcoholic parents. I was in foster care for years, dealt with a few different types of neglect and abuse, um, going through puberty, kind of same thing, unwanted touching. Then, when I was 17, I was raped by my boss and his two friends. And I ran away and joined the military because I didn't know what I was going to do with life. I never faced any of my trauma. I ran to weed and alcohol. And so then I ran away to the military. In the military, I got married and divorced by the time I was 21, before going to Iraq. And so you take and then in Germany is kind of when my alcoholism, just shot through the roof. I'm 19, legally allowed to drink in Germany, going through a divorce. And so you take all of this traumatized person who never processed through anything. She's a bloomin' alcoholic, and now you give her a gun and send her to Iraq and tell her to take care of dead bodies and get mortared and deal with, lots of blood and gore and stuff. And then she gets good at her job, and then her body falls apart, and now she can't do her job anymore. And so my value and my worth, at least my perceived value and worth just dropped through the floor. I had no compassion for myself, and all the voices in my head were just telling me that I was a piece of crap. And so I dropped really low mentally and emotionally. And now I've got my physical body falling apart too. So when I got out of the military, I was not in a good place. And so my transition was rough. They medically discharged me and well, just to kind of go back, when I was in Iraq, I also was participating in some not good stuff and ended up getting investigated. And we were getting mortared all the time, dealt with a few, I think I already said this, but a few dead bodies and stuff like that. So anyways, just mentally, I was not in a good place. So they gave me a bunch of money when I got out because I got medically discharged, and I decided to go to Vegas and act stupid and spent all my money. And when I got out, when I got back, I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do with my life, but I know that what I'm doing is not sustainable and it's not good. So I decided to try to do something different, and I went to school. Now, I'm so super blessed that I got out with a medical discharge because I already had this ability, but my body didn't feel right. My mind didn't feel right. So I'm just drinking all the time. I go to school, I'm doing great in school, but I never really felt comfortable in life. And I got in a really codependent alcoholic relationship with a guy that I had deployed with. And he had deployed two other times before that, but with the infantry guys, and, not, not mentally okay himself. And so we just both weren't healthy together, separately. We weren't healthy. And at one point we decided to split up. I'd gotten in an accident with his kids. I wasn't drunk, but I was in that drunk mentality where I could drive all night without getting rest after being up all day and driving all day. And went driving with his four kids, and there was an incident that happened, and I did not react fast enough, and we got in an accident, and thank God the kids were okay, but it was not good. And then my reaction to that was to leave him with his traumatized kids and go to a friend's funeral just so I could go get drunk for the weekend because I didn't want to face everything that was happening. And that was our last weekend that we were together. But that was just like the tip of the spear. My mentality was just not good. I was just in a bad place. And I had felt for a long time that I needed to go to Florida. But like I could feel my higher power calling me because my saving grace in everything is that I always knew that there was a God. And I was raised in a spiritual household, but I say that he was in a cage in my heart. I would go visit him, but when I didn't like what he said, I'd be like, no, thank you, and walk away, or I would say, thank you for what you said. I'm gonna do this, and then I walk away and just go get in trouble anyway. And so my higher power told me that I needed to go to Florida, and I didn't know why. And so I had chosen the relationship first. And then when we broke up, I decided, okay, I'm going to go to Florida. And I knew it was the right thing, but I did it the wrong way. And when I say the wrong way, I took all my financial aid for the semester and then dropped out and left because I wanted all the money so I could go. So my plan was to go into school, but my alcoholic brain wasn't thinking. And it's like, hey, you can't come into school because you're going to lose all those credits because they're holding your transcripts hostage because you didn't pay them. So I did what any good alcoholic did, and I got a job at a brew house. And, my life was partying and drinking. And I was 28, I believe, when I moved out there. And I was partying with all these underage kids because it was a college town that I was living at. And I was living in a house with three of them. And I was like, finally, at some point, and this was God's grace, he's like, what are you doing? Like, you can't be living and partying with all these kids anymore. And so I moved out and got a studio apartment. But at this point, my body is getting worse. I don't know what's going on, but I'm just ignoring it. I'm just taking pain pills. I'm smoking pot and drinking all the time and just not taking care of myself. And it got to a point where I would go to the bar around the corner, double fisted at last call, chug it down, double fist it again, chug it down, run to the gas station so I could get more to take home. And then in the morning, I would, go and get like mimosas and stuff. And it was damn near every day, 18 to 24 pack every night. That was my life, and
What broke that cycle? Because a lot of people, once they're in this cycle, when it comes to alcoholism, it's extremely difficult, if not impossible, to break out of it.
Mhm. So, and this is where my higher power comes in.
Okay.
Like God does some amazing things. And there was a multiple little things that were happening. My best friend at that point, I met her a year before I got sober, and she worked at a psych unit. And she could see the patterns that were happening. And she kind of helped walk me through my bottom. And she started saying things like, hey, you're kind of bordering on alcoholism. And I made the joke, no, I am an alcoholic. And I'm like, oh shit, I might be an alcoholic. And there was just little things, like she was a normal drinker. Like she could have a couple and put it down. She could have one and put it down. She could be around it and not drink it. And I was like, how do you do that? Like her half drinking beer on the table that she's had for 2 hours, and I'm already down, 6, 8 pack, something like that, and I'm like, what are you doing, dude? And so there was that, being able to see an example of that. And then I had visited my sister, and my sister was telling me some things about the family that my perception was just so off. I had all these like giant, huge resentments, and I thought I was alone, and I thought that she hated me, and she didn't hate me. She went into her own protection mode, but she did it in a healthy way. She went to college, got married, had kids, and like found her joy. And I ran away to the military to go get drunk and laid like that. I was just not in a good place. And so being able to talk to her and kind of see, some of that, and there was a few other things that happened, and God's just like, you're not okay, dude. And so then there was one night that I was driving drunk, with a friend of mine. He was having an emotional time, and my way to take care of him was to get drunk because I couldn't handle my emotions, let alone someone else's. So let's just get drunk together. That was just how I knew. So we got super, super drunk, and I was driving in the fast lane in Jacksonville, Florida at 2 o'clock in the morning. but I was going the speed limit. I was going 70. I was in the fast lane going 70. So, people are going 90, 100, next to me. And at one point I swerved so hard, I almost hit the guardrail and I had to overcorrect. And as now, just to paint the picture, my friend is crying, sitting where the feet go in the passenger seat.
Wow.
Okay. So he's not in a seatbelt, nothing. He's just sitting down there crying. I'm barely paying attention. I don't know what's going on. I almost hit the guardrail. I overcorrect and I literally feel God grab the wheel and straighten it, yank it out of. Ooh, it's been a while since I've been emotional about that one. But literally yank it out of my hand as somebody goes zooming by. My friend would have been dead. He would have been dead on impact. I probably would have been mangled or dead. I don't know. But in that moment, God just said, you're going to kill people that you love. This is no longer you risking your own life who you don't care about, but now you're risking people that you care about, and so you need to straighten your shit. So that was my last drink. My last drink was January 16th, 2017, and my sobriety date is January 17th of 2017.
So we're going on 9 years.
January, God willing, will be 9 years. And, in those 9 years, I've learned how to handle life. It's not always pretty. It's been a journey. There's been a lot in. I don't know how much details, how we're doing on time, but in the last 8.5 years, I've been in the psych unit twice. I did an intensive outpatient program last year for PTSD and food addiction. I lost my father in July this year. I was diagnosed with hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which is a genetic condition where my body makes a defective collagen. And I regularly have to wear braces on my knees, around my waist, on my wrists sometimes, special shoes. Sometimes I have to use a cane. I had to get my hips replaced last year. I was in a care facility for 8 months. I have gained weight. I have lost weight. I've been through multiple different types of therapy. I have lost many battle buddies to suicide. I have had my own suicidal ideations. These are just, some of the things that I've experienced. And it's not always pretty. And I'm going through some really difficult things in life right now where there's a transition period that I don't know what's going to happen, and life hasn't been pretty. But in my sobriety, I have been able to learn how to find peace in the pain. I've been able to learn how to not do things on my own, to reach out for help, to use my voice. I have developed support groups and support systems, between my recovery groups. I've gotten closer with God and spiritual groups with the VA, just with friends. It hasn't been pretty, but I've had help all along the way.
Well, one of those ways, at least to me, when I first met you, and I didn't know all this, it didn't really matter, was it became very evident that you really leaned into this part of your life that involved creation with poetry and photography, and got on your site and looked. I'm like, I like taking pictures. I'm not good at it, but I know when someone is really honed their craft. And then I read some of your poetry, and I'm like, man, this is coming from a different kind of place, because to me, you don't do poetry for, TikTok likes and views. Poetry is a very personal thing, and it's a really difficult art form in the fact that you're taking words and trying to really craft feelings around those words. And so take me into what led you into these spaces, because yes, we had talked and you had told me some of the challenges that you had dealt with, but you also, your face lit up when you started talking about your poetry and photography. And it's a very focal part of you now, important part of you now, excuse me. So I'm curious, how did that figure into where you are?
So there is many, many layers with that. And yeah, I'm going to get emotional about this too.
Okay.
Creativity has been my saving grace through everything, through everything. I have touched creativity since I was a child, and it has been besides God, it has been my one true constant in my entire life that has kept me going, because besides spirituality. And I also just want to share, like one of the thing with creativity for me, it has become a way that I heal out loud. It's that idea of healing for other people to see, and it's not for them, it is for you. But, like I heal for me, but I heal out loud so that you guys can see that it is possible. And if
I heal out loud for
yes,
me.
yes.
Wow, that's profound, man. Whoa, Marie, this went to a whole different level real quick. I
Yeah.
healed out loud for me. So people see the damage, people see the scars, but they also see the healing, and by that
Yes.
okay.
Yeah. So I like the creativity is part of it, but like my recovery, my step work, my church stuff, like there's so many different layers. My podcasting, I heal out loud because I never felt like I had a voice. And so in writing, I found my voice. In creativity, I found my voice. Before I go down my history of healing out loud with my creativity, can I actually read you a poem?
I'd be honored if you would.
This poem is actually called Healing Out Loud. And I wrote this year for this because I started doing all this podcasting, and I published my first book of my poetry, and this will be in my second book. But I wrote this to kind of put into words why I heal out loud. And again, I heal out loud in speaking, but also in writing and in creativity. And I love it. So healing out loud. I suffered in silence for far too long. I always felt that something was wrong. I kept all inside, was close to imploding. I then heard other voices and I started unloading. God loosened my voice that was locked inside. Other people showed me to let go of pride. I started learning to heal out loud, become more confident, and feel more proud. I wrote and shared through poetry how I am more me than I used to be. I have shared my art to others around to show how I see beauty abound. Now, through speaking, the words keep flowing. There will never be a way of knowing just how many people my voice might touch. It's in God's hands. I know that much. I have been enjoying using my voice, sharing my story, and making the choice to no longer filter my faith or pain and remind others that hope does remain. I encourage others to heal out loud too. Whatever that looks like is between God and you. Don't suffer in silence. It's not very fun. Please find help from anyone. Address the fears that keep you frozen. You may find you have been chosen. Your healing may help just one person when the doubts in their head begin to worsen. Your healing may be the light that they need, the spark of hope, a faithful seed that pulls them from a dark abyss. When we heal out loud, it won't go amiss. Thank you to all who were an example to me, and sharing your voice, you helped set me free. And so that's the thing is healing out loud has been something, even when I was a kid and I didn't feel like I had a voice, creativity was a way that I found my voice. Even when I couldn't share the pain that was going on inside, creativity was that safety for me, you know. And it has led into this beautiful life, of healing out loud in many different ways. But it started when I was a kid, and I used to do puzzles all the time, right? But I would get bored with them, so I'd flip them upside down and I'd do them brown and put them together, and then I always did art, and then I got into music. I tried playing piano, but I didn't really stick with it. I tried playing the big old bass, but it was too much energy. I tried playing the clarinet,
Yeah.
but it always made me lightheaded. I know now it's because of my medical disorder. But then I would sing and I would sing and I would sing, I would sing. And when I was 12, my mom was finally like, if you're going to sing, we're going to make you good at it, because I was tone deaf. So I would sing, and they put me in choirs. And so then I was in choirs all through junior high. And then in high school, I got to a point where I was finally in the audition choirs, and I took voice lessons and I started writing music, and I was in the a cappella choir my senior year. And I loved music. It was my way to praise God. It was my way to let out my own experiences. And, that's what I did. And then in high school, I also, there's a teacher here in Utah, and I'm gonna do a shout out for him. His name is Greg Park, and he's actually a local author, but he was my creative writing teacher and my science fiction writing teacher. And I didn't remember this until I went and saw him actually a few months ago. I went and saw him for the first time since high school a few months ago. And he told me that there was something that he always said, and he always said, just right. Now, I remember getting that thought process, oh, I just need to write something. And I actually have written 2 poems called Just Right. And I did not know that it was because he used to say, because I dissociate a lot with my mental health problems, but I didn't remember that he used to say that. But he's like, yeah, I used to tell you just right.
Yeah.
But this man was fantastic. And he's like, I don't care if you follow the curriculum. He told me to write what I felt like I needed. He gave me that creativity, that gift of creativity. And so that was when I started writing poetry. But if you check out my YouTube or my Facebook, you can see I did a week of my high school poems, and you can see that there is a definite difference in my high school poems. They are a lot shorter. A lot of them don't rhyme. Some of them are full of pain, and so it has changed so much in my sobriety. But that kind of started that. When I was in the military, I wrote more songs. I stopped writing poetry, but I wrote more songs. But that was about all the creativity that I did. And so then you kind of fast forward, and I would kind of touch on some creativity, but I wasn't really in when I was getting darker and darker in my depression and my alcoholism. I kind of lost my creativity for a long time. And that was my whole losing my voice, right? And then when I got sober, I started breaking the walls that I had built up. And the way that I kind of look at it, an old bishop told me that for some people, God has to mold them with clay. For other people, it's like Michelangelo. And Michelangelo had this big old slab that he's like, everyone said, how did you create David out of the slab? And he's like, I just chipped away what wasn't him. So that's me. I am this big stone slab that God just had to chip away everything that wasn't me. I'd put on all of these things that weren't me. And so over the years, the title of my book, my poetry book, is More Me Than I Used to Be, A Journey to Freedom. Because as I got sober and everything started chipping off, I became more me. And I found my voice again, especially in my writing. And so in my sobriety journey, I started writing, but I would write about the pain. And like the most of my poems in the beginning, it talks a lot about pain, but then it transitioned to this healing portion. And it's like, here is the truth. There is pain, but there is also peace. There is love and there is joy. And so I started writing, and that that is something that has just been my entire sobriety. So I just published a book this year about my journey, and every poem led me to a new place. And I'm currently working on a second book now. But so that is with the poetry aspect. So then we go into, and that's with the writing aspect, and
So
over the go ahead.
yeah, so you did that, and that's how we kind of got connected through the tip of the spear with David Willis. And you come on one night, and you said you had just dipped your proverbial toe into the podcasting world. We're kind of unsure, but you knew you liked it. So a couple of things is, I guess my first question is, what prompted you to join us that one night? And then how is podcasting the same or different in the creative process for you as your poetry was or is?
So before I do that, did you want me to go on because you asked me before, the photography journey? Did you want me to tell you a little bit
Oh,
about
yeah.
that?
Sorry.
Okay.
I was
So
getting
it's
excited.
okay. It's okay. So I'm just going to back up a little bit. In
Yeah.
my book as well is a lot of my own photography. And so when I say that over the years I lost my voice in my writing, I did. I lost my voice. I wasn't doing my music. I wasn't doing my writing. However, what I did get into was photography, because even though I didn't feel like I had a voice out loud I couldn't speak my pain, I couldn't write about my pain, I just kind of got lost. I wanted to find beauty in the world, even when I couldn't speak about it, and I didn't have my voice. So I found a voice in photography. And so most of my photography, most of my photos that you see in that new book, many of it was done in my alcoholism, because I just knew that I needed to find beauty, or else I would have killed myself multiple times over, realistically, if I didn't have a way to find the beauty. And so I took a class when I was in college, and that class just bloomed. I started doing nature photography and just fell in love with it. I would go travel and just take pictures. Like, nature is my favorite because it's, people had failed me in my life. I had seen genuine evil and horror in my life from my childhood all the way to the deployment. People had failed me. So I would do some family photo shoots or event photo shoots, but nature and God was where I found my peace. And so I would just go traveling on my own or with my ex-fiance at that point, and just go do photography. And so that is something that continued throughout my entire bottom. I got this decent camera, and I would just go travel and photograph nature, because I didn't know how else. I didn't know how to get out of the mentality, but I knew in nature with God, I felt whole. And so that continued on even into my sobriety a little bit. But the poetry mostly took over. And I did a couple other things in creative, like I've worked with oil pastels.
Oh, wow.
I've worked with it's something called Metal Earth, where they're little what models that you do out of sheet metal. I've done all sorts of other little tiny things, drawing and coloring and stuff like that. But the photography mostly in my so music and a little bit of poetry in high school, and then photography in my alcoholism, and then my writing, where I found my voice. And so that leads me to earlier this year. And so earlier this year, I got this prompting from God that I needed to get this book published. And this book, like I said, it's my poetry and my photography. But I figured out really quickly that book was just a jumping off point to get my voice out there even more. And so through the Wounded Warrior Project, they are partnered with the Armed Services Art Partnership. And if you don't know what either of those are, please look them up. But the Armed Services Art Partnership is very similar to Cav Arts, And they do all sorts of classes to get veterans involved with the arts. So they had a podcasting class that I did. And because I was just curious about starting my own. And I was like, I don't have the mentality or the energy to start my own podcast. And he said, you can start out as a guest on podcasts. And I was like, oh, perfect. So I looked up podcastguest.com, and Brian from Every Day is a Saturday, USMC veteran, was on that first email. And I went in and got interviewed by him and told my story. And it was my first time telling my story publicly. And it was very nerve-wracking, you know. But the idea was, if I'm going to have a book, I probably should get myself out there so that people know about the book. But it turned more into like that conversation with Brian helped me have confidence in my own story. And he was like, hey, you know, like, let's go into more details. Let's work together. And so then I started becoming a regular. So now I am a co-host on his Coffee Talk segment. And so what we did for the first like 10 episodes, what we did was we broke apart our stories. You know, I talked about my childhood, he talked about his, and then I talked about my teenage year, or he talked about his. Then I talked about my military service, he talked about his. And then we would have episodes where we kind of broke into different topics, 9/11, PTSD, you know, all sorts of different things. And now we are currently, you know, and then continued our stories as well along the way. And now we are taking guests. And so as I started doing this, I got involved with, you know, I found out that there is this giant community of veteran podcasters. And I just fell in love with you guys, and you guys took me in and brought me under your wing. And so I've been a guest on the Tip of the Spear, which is a podcast for veteran podcasters to kind of do a sit rep on what's going on in the world. And then Willis from Homefront Sit Rep, you know, he invited me on to Cav Arts. Again, is another program that helps veterans get into the arts. They have a podcast class for veteran podcasters. And so I was able to go and be a part of that. And so then I just have gotten connected to so many other people, and I've been able to be a guest on multiple other podcasts, and not just veteran podcasts, but I've been on a disability podcast to talk about my hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. I've been, so that one's Empowered Extend. I've been on the One Moment podcast to talk about my mental health journey, you know, and you know, a couple of the other veteran podcasts to just talk a little bit more about my journey. And I have fallen in love with being able to be out there and share my story and encourage other people. And then in doing all of this, I started a Facebook community that is called SliderBabe, and it is dedicated to creatively healing out loud through community. And so I have people that come on there and they share some of the ways that they are creative and how they're healing. And we are sharing resources. It just started like not even a month ago. So it's brand spanking new. But if you're interested in sharing, you know, how you are healing out loud and how you're using creativity, you know, we had somebody who talks about that he's using, he's creating this think tank with AI and something. And there's another guy that restores old trucks and makes them look older, you know, and that was really cool. You know, there's another guy who's cooking, and you know, there's another guy who's a plumber. He's a veteran and he's a plumber, but he was a medic, and he takes pictures on the job and then creates memes to laugh and joke and encourage people to join the arts and also to find healing in their own way. And so, you know, my life has become, and I also, on another side note, I do recovery advocacy as well. So people will contact me, I'll help them find resources, or I'll be a voice, you know, or an ear if they need someone to talk to, and I can just share my own experience. So my life is literally about creativity and healing and helping other people and using my voice. And I really have struggled over the years with the idea that my voice matters and it should matter to the people that I care most about, right? But the thing that I've realized is the people who need my voice will hear it, and I don't have to justify my voice. And even people that I care about and love, my voice might not be for them. And that's okay, because I don't need the validation from other people. I'm using the voice the way God wants me to, and He is bringing my voice to the people who need to hear it.
As we wind this down, I see that this is a theme of resilience in a different way. It's not like, hey, I had a situation and I ground through that in a short amount of time and now I'm different. You've had to pretty much do this over the course of your life, and it started with accepting that you had, problems. Some of those are your own choice, but you worked through them, and then you found some things to help you work through that. And now you have this whole, healing out loud. Art is healing, creativity fuels your soul. Even with all these challenges, even with all these things that, make life difficult. And look, I get it. Sometimes life is, even on a good day, life is hard, right? There's still this thing that fuels you. I have to ask, are you excited about the future now that you have these things to pour yourself into? And I have to think there's somebody out there who's already seen your healing. Have anyone contacted you about saying, you know what, Marie, I saw what you were doing and it helped me? Has that ever happened to you?
Yeah, yeah. So there's a couple thoughts on all of that. The thing that I learned about resiliency, it's not, just push through and keep going. Resiliency is admitting that you need help and reaching out for help. Like I wrote this poem called Army Strong, and in it, it talks about the thing that I hated about the military was that I always had a battle buddy. But that has saved my life in civilian world is I've always had battle buddies because I reach out for help. I cannot do this on my own. I cannot. And so the thing that excites me the most is that I have built up a community of people who love me and support me. It's not the community that I always wanted, like I said, I have struggled there. I've had to walk away from friends. I've had to walk away from some family members, but I have this community who loves me, and going through the difficulties that I'm going through right now is I've got so many people surrounding me and just filling me with love. And I'm so excited about the future because, I don't know where it's going, but I'm taking my hands off the wheel and letting God drive. And God does some amazing things when you stop taking control. Like you take the next step, but you let go of you make your choice, but you let go of the consequence, right? Because it's up to God. We don't know what's going to happen. And I'm super excited because there's a lot of wonderful things on the horizon. I'm working on a reprint of the book because there was a mistake. And once I get it reprinted, then I'm going to start selling it online. I'm working on a couple kids' books. If anybody's an illustrator, contact me. But I'm working on a couple kids' books. I'm working on a few more, like a book of essays, autobiography. I'm working on another poetry book. I've got a lot of things with regards to, podcasting. We've got a ton of awesome guests on the way. I've got a ton of other guest appearances for me. My hope is that I get into some sort of public speaking. I think like my dream would be to be on a TED Talk at some point, you know, but I'm excited about what's going to happen. I don't know what it looks like. It's scary, but I'm moving forward in faith instead of fear now. And so I'm excited about that. And, your question on have people reached out? Yes. I've had people, reach out and tell me that their story has helped them. I'm in the recovery community, and so that kind of thing happens all the time. It's like, oh, yeah, like I've never met anybody else who's been through that. Oh, yeah, thanks for wording it that way. Oh, hey, I'm not alone in this.
Wonderful.
Yeah, that's the thing. I'm not alone in this. And that's one of the reasons why I speak. Now, I've also had people, like last week, I had an experience where somebody did not like what I had to say and they were not happy about it. And the reality is that's okay. This is my voice, this is my journey, this is my story, and not everybody is going to relate to it and not everybody's going to like it. It took me a little while because, my ego gets involved and I start feeling like, all of the voices that I'm telling myself start attacking me, you know, but I've had more people tell me that my words relate to them, even if the story is different, right? The message is there. And so that's the kind of thing that I try to hold on to. But yeah, I've had a few people reach out and I'm always open for feedback, positive or negative. It helps me grow, it helps me learn, and but yeah, if you have a story that is similar, please reach out. Marie at SliderBabe.com, SliderBabe. I would love to hear your story. If my story resonates with you, if you have concerns, need someone to talk to, like please reach out.
Well, I will have all the links to Marie on the Oscar Mike Radio show post and the website. Last question. Well, not question, but I couldn't help but notice that you're wearing a shirt that says "Your story matters." How important is it for you to people see that you're walking your talk and that they should understand that their stories matter?
So, two things. First off, Till Valhalla Project. This
Okay.
project is phenomenal. They sell t-shirts and stuff, and they provide plaques for fallen soldiers or fallen military members from overseas and those that we lose here to the 22. And they are just phenomenal. But I most of the shirts that I wear are from them. And this one particular, I love, your story matters. I love people to know that I am healing because that Willis says, be someone's stranger, right? I try to be that for as many people as I can. I have the disabled veteran tag on my car, and it's mostly so that other vets can see like, hey, this person's a vet, maybe I need someone to talk to today. Maybe I'm going to feel more comfortable, in my recovery. I try to be open for people to come talk to. I'm doing all of this stuff, I want to be that person that people feel comfortable enough to say, hey, I'm not okay. I need somebody to talk to because I can't talk to my family. I can't talk to my friends. And I've been there. Sometimes you can't talk to family and friends, and sometimes a stranger can be your best friend. I've had strangers that, will reach out to me. Okay, here's an example. I was really early in sobriety and I was driving and I stopped at this cafe and I was feeling really down and depressed and it would have been really easy for me to reach for a drink, but somebody pulled out some change out of his pocket and there was a recovery coin in there. And in that moment, I knew that I wasn't alone and we sat and talked and I didn't pick up a drink that day. Like it is so important for people to feel like there is somebody safe around them. So that is super important for me because I've been on the other side of it.
Well, you're living this now. People can see your healing. People can learn from you. I am just so humbled and honored that you took this time to share with me and my listeners and watchers here in Oscar Mike Radio. And I think we can learn that if you heal out loud, you're not alone. And if you're not alone, there's nothing that you can't accomplish. Maria, I just, again, want to thank you for coming on. I'm so glad you're part of the Tip of the Spear crew, and you certainly have somebody here to support you and be there for you as well. And I just appreciate your honesty and your candor and your authenticity today.
Can I just say one last thing?
Absolutely.
Something that I have learned, and I've said it a few times in the last couple of days to remind myself, everything's going to be okay, but not the okay you think. The thing that I am learning, and I'm going to cry, but the thing that I am learning is that your picture might not look the way that you want it to, but God painted the picture just the way it's supposed to be on the box. And so if things don't feel pretty, there's my poem, More Me Than I Used to Be, that the book is named after, talks about that I've had this puzzle. I was born with this puzzle, but I started forcing a shape of me that I thought was supposed to be in there. And I took pieces from other people and threw other pieces away. And God is helping me put that puzzle back together the way that He wants it. So it's not going to look the way like that we want it, but it is beautiful the way God has it. And so just remember, if you are having a hard part right now and you feel like your picture is being torn apart, it's because that picture wasn't yours. And so God's helping you find the picture that is yours. And so just please remember that you can find peace and you can find joy in the pain. And just remember, you're not alone.
Again, thank you so much. I look forward to having you back on when the book launches. And I just appreciate what you've already brought to our career Tip of the Spear.
Thank you.
Love these kind of conversations. This is why Oscar Mike Radio was created. And yes, we're in year 10, but these never get old. These never get old. Marie, thank you again. As we say in Oscar Mike Radio, we are mission in flight. Thank you.
Every generation, every sacrifice. Our nation's service members have stood up for our freedom, our families, and our future. Now it's our turn to stand up for them. This year, you can honor their service in a deeply personal way by sponsoring a $17 Veterans Wreath. Each wreath is more than a symbol. It's a heartfelt tribute to the heroes who served and to the families who carry their legacy. Visit wreathsacrossamerica.org to sponsor a wreath today. This isn't just a wreath. It's a personal gift to an American hero.
Thank you for listening and watching Oscar Mike Radio, where our active duty service members and veterans are in action and the mission is in flight. Oscar Mike Radio is an oversized load Co-Sinister One production. If you are a veteran or know a veteran who needs help, please dial 988 and press 1 for the Veterans Crisis Line.